So for me, Tekken 1 was a game that I didn't really get into all that much because I thought the rendering and the whole game is kind of rough. The gameplay elements weren't really a bad idea. I just honestly thought that when Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 came out, I preferred those games to Tekken 1 and 2, which I will get into Tekken 2 in a little bit, but I just thought that basically it was just one of the games that I just really wasn't pulled in by because the pacing of the game was pretty slow, Tekken 1, and also there was some questionable ideas on how they were trying to portray the whole entire tournament. It never felt like the story was taking its toll, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but at the same time I feel like if you're gonna make a really better way of trying to outshine Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, then it wasn't the way to go. Tekken 2, however, was an improvement on the rendering. I honestly thought that sometimes when you look at Tekken 2, this gameplay had some glitches here and there. With this slight sidestep animation that they worked on for a little bit, I honestly thought that that was kind of the key to kind of make it seem like it should stand out. Because at the time, Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 had sidesteps, but I think Virtua Fighter 2 had sidesteps. But to tell you the truth, I honestly thought that sometimes you use these sort of inspirations that, you know, you can make the game come into its own. And I think Tekken 2 has done that in terms of the character design. I mean, majority, when you go back to Tekken 1 and 2 and all the characters that have existed, many of them have actually been inspired by Street Fighter themselves. Like, you see Paul Phoenix and he just reminds you a little bit of like the younger version of Ken, even though Ken wears the same kind of gi, like red color, but at least it's designed. Like, there is a clean red gi that or shodo that Ken wears, and it's not really shown on any like decoration or something like that, or logo or anything like that, but Paul Phoenix has that. And then obviously Kazuya's not shodo, but you do get inspirations from it from Heihachi himself. But at the same time, I think the character designs were pretty good for Tekken, but again, I honestly thought that it really has got a long step to go to come into its own, which leads me to the next game. So I'll put Tekken 2 on the D tier for me. Tekken 3 though, yo, that game here, needless to say, it was one of my favorite games of all time, and anyone would literally tell you how much of a classic it is. But for me, I just think that Tekken 3 had some characters that were just like off the charts, broken, but also were just so dope to play with. Like, Jin Kazama would always be one of my top tier characters for Tekken, especially from the start of his journey to Tekken, and being in that game, he was just so good game wise. So I think that when you have characters like Hwan, characters like Lin Xiaoyu, characters like Eddie Gordo, that new characters that are being put on the Tekken franchise, it's just great. It's like a breath of fresh air for some parts. But I think that when we go into Tekken 3, it's just like there are some great ideas such as Tekken Ball. There were some Tekken Forces, which I think was the weaker part of it, because sometimes when you try and fight all the other Tekken Forces, they tend to go off the screen, and there are some glitchy movements where you just repeatedly punch them so much it just comes out there. There are some broken characters, as I said before, like Gon, for example. Like, we all love Gon, but his character's shit. And the story has taken a bit of its toll. It's like every story that I look at that has not really been taken seriously before Tekken 4, I have to like research it to kind of see what the whole ending was about. And then you get the idea of where they were going with the character endings and their story and why they joined the King of Iron Fist tournament. So that's kind of a nice surprise and experience to have, you know? And the ending of Jin is so good, like, goodness gracious. The music in there is top tier as well. I honestly think that Tekken is one of my favorites, so I'm gonna put this on the A tier. And just in case I didn't forget, Tekken Tag, definitely an S tier as well. I think that, you know what, with that game, it was so much enjoyment in there. Like, they've stepped up a bit on the graphics as well. They did an arcade version of it, but instead they kind of made it more enjoyable and more complex and more just so much was going on there that I just felt like, wow, this game is so great. Now, there are some things that I will say that I didn't like about it, was the having not the last man standing in there. Like, I generally feel like there's no point in making a tag team where only one person gets knocked out in each team and then everyone else loses. But it's like, if someone wins, one person has to get knocked out. But I feel like maybe that's a challenge in itself, to not make people just get knocked out. But then at the same time, it just makes no sense to me. But I always think that the music for Tekken Tag Tournament was just the GOAT tier, like the reason why I went there. I still play it on my Apple Music and I think it's fun. But again, there are some things that I think that they really stepped up a notch with the complexity, with the character designs. And I felt like that, you know, there were some characters that I felt like were missing. I feel like they should have brought back Gon or Dr. Boskonovich, or even some like characters from like Tekken 1. I know there are some that have already been in there, but I'm sure there's like Tekken 1 and 2 characters that were not in the game before that should be in the game. Like Martial Law, for example, like he wasn't even in the Tekken Tag Tournament. He should have been there. To have both Martial Law and Forest Law, that would be a really good game. Like, to have really good competition between father and son. So, you know what? Tekken Tag Tournament, even though it's a dream match, not much to add. I'm gonna put this up as the S tier. So Tekken 4, yeah, this is where the relationship between the fans and Tekken start. Because for me, I think that Tekken 4 is still a great game. There's no denying how much I love this game with a soul. But at the same time, I can understand why people don't like it. I can understand why people didn't play it as much as they did, because the sales between Tekken 4 and 5 is a night and day difference. Tekken 4 basically had the less sales, except for Tekken 1, because Tekken 1's also in the same lane as well. Many people were not happy with the gameplay elements in this game. They were focused on poking, the juggling was limited, the movement was limited. It just felt like taking away gameplay moves was the final straw, to the point where people thought Tekken 4 was just forgettable. And the switch up for Jin Kazama's fighting style is something that people were not happy about either. I mean, if you really complain that much about bringing back the Mishima fighting style that Jin had, you could just play Tekken 5 and play Devil Jin. That's easy as that. But still, I think that when you look at these games, you can appreciate where it was going. And this was the only game that is yet to beat any other story mode. Like, any story modes from Tekken 5 onwards, none of it was as good as Tekken 4 story mode. They took the game seriously in terms of where the story was going. It felt like most of the fighters knew why they were here and had a reason to fight. They all want something. It's like a grown-up version of Tekken where you experience depression, like bankruptcy and drunken haze. Like, that is real life. You don't see over the top jetpacks and over the top like buildings being exploded. It just feels like they were fighting in real places for a real reason. I still find it weird where they were fighting at shopping malls and stuff like that, but I also thought it was so much fun that I generally felt like this game was slept on. It's like the black sheep, but at the same time, it's really good. Like, the jump between Tekken 3 to Tekken 4 is insane. Like, you can't deny how good it was. So I will say Tekken 4 is a great game, and they've really stepped up on the graphics for the Tekken forces. I'm sad that they removed Tekken Ball, but again, that happens in Tekken 8, thank God. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one on the A tier as well. Tekken 5, however, was a top tier game. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought they really did a good job at giving the fans their 10-year anniversary, especially for adding more game modes such as Tekken 1, 2 and 3. Give the people the nostalgia of where Tekken came from, and now they'll just feel like that when you see it, it's just great. The combos are now free. There's so much freedom in making combos, producing combos. The game speed is now on point now. It's now fast. It's now just exciting. Also, they really stepped up on the music side of things, though I do like the Tekken 4, like dark, gritty, slowed down music and vibe and all that. But I still think that this one is more lively, more upbeat. And another thing is that they changed the complexity of the environments, which was really good. A lot of them are pretty good and they stand out the most. New characters such as Raven, Asuka Kazama, which I would say defrauded Jun Kazama, thank you very much. But still, I think that when you look at characters like that, they've really stepped up a notch and gave people variety of fighters and different fighting styles. I will say though that when you look at people like, I'm happy that we got Tekken 5. Tekken 5 will always be an S tier in my heart. I generally have no words to say. The negative side of it probably was the story mode, because I didn't think that the story mode VO was as good as Tekken 4's VO. I felt like they were just overreacting and say, Jin, a new way, a new... It's like, he could have talked normally, you know? But again, I still think that this was great. And the last thing I could say is Devil Within is garbage. So yeah, Tekken 5, despite Devil Within, I'll put this in the S tier. Tekken 6. I mean, I feel like this was the start of why I felt like the Mishima storyline couldn't be taken seriously anymore, because I just feel like they've made it 100 times ridiculous than it did before. Like, it just made you miss the Tekken 4 story mode so much that it just felt like, nah, like this was too much. However though, the idea of scenario campaign as like a 2-player game was actually fun and more enjoyable than the scenario campaign on the story mode. It was the most long-winded video game I've had to experience. Neither of it was focused on the Mishima bloodline as much as I hoped it would. It was focused on 2 new characters, Lars and Alicia. And I feel like those 2 characters, not many people actually cared about. They were like, who is that? Turns out that Lars Alexanderson was just an adopted Heihachi son. I mean, to be honest though, it just made no sense to me how that even worked out. I kind of wanted to see where Jin was going to go after announcing to be part of the Mishima Saibotsu. But all of that, he started the whole entire war. So he couldn't really go against himself or he could go against himself and try and blame other people. So he decided to just take up in the chin and be like, yeah, I created this, I had no choice. But there was a reason around it. I'm sure the whole entire thing was like an idea where let's make it more serious. But there is arcade modes for a reason. This was like the year where I felt like they were starting to have their own kind of boundaries, where they just decided to do something different rather than just do arcade modes. I mean, I guess maybe it would get a bit more repetitive to focus on arcade modes to make it a story mode, but sometimes you just need to get straight to the point rather than just give people 4 hours of long-winded video game. Outside of that, I just feel like that, you know what, some of the character designs were pretty cool, but this was like the era where the PS3 had games that just looked all the same to me, and I felt like that sometimes you could just give people something different. But again, Tekken 6 was something that people were starting to feel like it was going a bit downhill, so I kind of was a bit disappointed with it. But I don't mind the gameplay of it though, to be honest. I think it's kind of cool. This is when the Rage art was a thing, and this is when, well, not Rage art, but this is when the Rage was a thing, and then the ground breaks as well was a thing. That in itself was pretty good too, so I just thought, you know what, that was a cool idea. So I'm probably going to put this in the B tier, even if I was complaining about scenario campaign too much. But I still think it's solid. So we now fast forward to Tekken 7. And you know what? I like this game a lot. I think it's a really good game. But there are some things that I also want to get out of the way that really confused me so much. The narrator on the story mode was very annoying. I saw on the main man suite that someone put on the chat the narrator was the best part of it. I was like, are you insane? Are you sure about that? Because to me, I was like, the narrator was part of the problem. Also, I felt like the character Kasumi was part of the problem. She was never really included in the story mode, so to add her as part of the story mode and to see what it is just like, well, this makes no sense to me. But the thing is, I can see why they would do that, but again, it just makes no sense. If you're gonna focus on something that's part of it, then that should not be there. Like, if you're gonna focus on just the Mishima story mode, focus on more on the father and the son rather than just a narrator just repetitively just so mellow as well, and he was just kind of overshadowing most parts of it, and I just didn't really enjoy it. But no doubt, I think it's capable of having a great gameplay and new features here and there that were really cool. And I also thought that there were parts where they added some intense scenes where when there's a close-up view of who's going to hit the opponent first was really great. But I also just thought that, you know, Tekken Bowling was good too. Very dynamic. I really like the colors on this one. It's really cool. But to be fair though, I think that there are problems where, you know, the same elements like in the Tekken Tag Tournament 2, there are some characters designs that I thought were a bit questionable. Most of the character designs felt like the fashion sense was drowning in them. And there are some characters that I thought were very off on their design. Like Jin, for example, I thought was a bit off. But I felt like the DLC kind of helped upgrade it a bit more. The moves were changed. The environments there were a lot more environments that were included into the game. And I thought that this was part of like making Tekken as good as it is. It doesn't feel like one of those games where I see a lot of depth in the rendering on the character side of things, but in the environment side of things, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of detail, there is a lot of complexity that was changed, especially that is in the amazing stage for Kushimitsu's stage. And I thought Kushimitsu's style was really good too, so you know what, I will put Tekken in the A tier. And then we got Tekken 3D Prime Experience. So same mechanics as Tekken 6, not a lot has changed, but I always felt like the Tekken 6 was underappreciated, even if I didn't like most of the games there. But at the same time, I just think that the customization was very limited as well. Like Tekken 6 had a lot of customizations, but I wish they could have added a bit more customization on the Prime Edition as well. So I think that this was the part where I was a bit like, they could have really added a bit of it. But as an experienced gameplay, it's fun, it's great. I just think it's a good standard Nintendo 3DS or 2DS gameplay that you can play. So in case you miss out on Street Fighter Alpha 2, you can have Tekken Prime if you want things to be more 3D. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one also on the B tier. And then we got Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Now, this game got a lot of hate and I can see why. But at the same time, I also felt like the difference between the two with like mechanics on Tekken 6 and the amount of characters that were in there. Every single character that was mentioned in there. You had the new ones that never been in Tekken before, and you also had all the old ones, the legends, I would say, in Tekken series, except for Gon, who's not actually there, unfortunately. But I also thought it would have been fun to see him like upgraded in 3D in real life, because Gon is such a cute dinosaur that he could do a lot of stuff. But at the same time, you know what? It is what it is, man. I think it's great. But still, I think that there are so many things that I honestly thought they were very hilarious. But also, I felt like the mechanics of the game was very hard to digest and also kind of produce with the combos and with the training. It wasn't even enough for me to actually get through how things are. So you know what? I'm a bit mixed on Tekken Tag 2. So you know what? There you go. So I'm going to put that on the C tier. I don't think it's too terrible, I don't think it's bad, but I just think that they could do better on certain parts. So yeah, I'll put it on the C tier. And then also Tekken Advance. Tekken Advance, that was the game on the Game Boy. Don't go into this thing expecting 3D dynamics around this Game Boy, because there are 8, 16, 32 bits, etc, etc. Those things were part of like the development of the Game Boy era. Obviously, Game Boys didn't really last all that long in the era. Like, you played it on the Game Boy Advance. I honestly felt like the characters were at a lengthy kind of playing it safe level. They didn't have Eddie Gordo. They didn't have most of the characters that you would know from there, like Gon, Boskonovich, all the unlockable characters that are in there, you know. No Brian as well, which was kind of sad. But again, I don't mind that. They always use the sounds for Tekken 3 and Tekken Advance. But again, the gameplay in it is pretty nice. It's good, it's challenging, and I definitely think you guys should try it out for yourself. That's if you could get a Game Boy Advance, if you can. But still, I guess the whole entire experience for that was really good. So, you know what? I'm going to put this on the B tier. So there you have it. I honestly thought that the tier list was hard to do. So yeah, let me know what you thought was the best game. I mean, look, listen, this is just my opinion. I'm gonna be wrong in certain parts, but then I'm also gonna be wrong in my own part. I mean, literally everyone's gonna take opinions so seriously. It's just like, I literally can't share mine, but who gives two shits anyway? So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed the tier list, and yeah, thank you guys for watching, and peace.